Morning. Happy Friday. Today is March 20th, and I hope everybody's having a good week. As for myself, I just finished fabricating the second ever Taildragger Type 2 production frame, of which I've already done a past YouTube episode in regards to this frame style. So I didn't want to bore you and have you shadow me again and show you all the same things. However, this particular frame has something special, and that is the client requested it to be rolling on dual 29s. What? Again? Yep, back-to-back production frames, totally unplanned, as this client did order this frame long before I debuted that board tracker last week. And for myself, pretty excited to see this come to life. So let's go ahead and jump right into it and see what's happening with peak cycles. Got quite a few T2 frame orders in the works. I want to touch on something from the last segment in regards to using a single stick to mirror roll bends on a frame like cantilevers, or the last frame was the seat stays. And you use a stick and roll it long enough for both sides and then cut it in half. The reason I have these labeled A, B, C, D is it's nearly impossible to get exactly the same bend twice on these roller benders, no matter how close you get them. To the naked eye, these all look the same, but one might be just slightly less or more than the other, so I label them of the way I cut them in half, A, B, C, D, and then that way you don't have one cantilever curved or less curved than the other on the same frame. Let's go ahead and set up this jig and get this day started. Triangle up and tack welded. With this frame, we'll be using a dummy seat post, which is why it's being held on with a magnet there. It will not be welded in, as the new owner plans to use a motorcycle pan or Springer style saddle. So I will not be adding a seat post. Meanwhile, I did weld in that miter there, getting ready to pull the triangle off the jig and weld the other side. Grind it smooth, throw it back up. Something I prefer to do before adding those chain stays in. Knocked out quite a bit since the last take. Got the cantilevers capped off there and sleeves welded in, grinded smooth, and have already welded in the cantilevers to the triangle. So we are ready to move on to the stays. Before we move on to the stays, I almost screwed this up completely. Can you tell me where? If you've been watching this episode since the beginning, as well as the last episode, you probably could. Remember this mark? This is where the tail dragger should be. I moved it up 4 inches for the board track. Had in mind the whole time it was set for 29-inch wheels, which it is this direction, but too short of a wheelbase this way. Move it back. Gotta admit, that was a close call. Had I done all that work and we would have did a mock-up on the ground, and we would have found out the hard way that that back wheel, especially being a 29, would have been way too close to that saddle. Sometimes things like that happen. That's why you got to look over everything twice. You've heard the expression, measure twice, cut once. Well, in this case, measure twice and try to do everything once. Let's keep it moving. Back in business. Getting ready to cap off the ends there. Got these stays cut, rolled, bent, mitered, coped. And before anybody brings up the green mark there, that mark is actually for my OBC build that I did. So I know I mentioned in the last take that that was the mark for the tail dragger. Actually, the tail dragger dropouts are now sitting where they should be. So let's go ahead and get this capped, tacked, and do a mock-up on the ground. Looking forward to seeing that. Moving on. All capped. Going to tack this up and get a mock-up on the ground. So that was pretty much a burn through session, and what I mean by that is I've already done an episode on that particular frame in detail with the tools running, and with this one I just ran through, jumped to each increment as I finished, and we're now at the point of mocking this on the ground, my favorite part. So let's go ahead and take a look. First Taildragger Type 2 on 29s. Stole the wheels from the board tracker I finished up last week, but the new owner will be using 29 3s on this frame. Dropout spacing in the rear set up for 135 millimeter. Everything looks good. Let's weld her up. More than happy with that. In fact, I'm so happy with it that I've never had a set of 29-inch wheels here at the shop for mock-up purposes. And as I mentioned, I did steal those wheels from the board tracker in order to make that happen. So I am going to have Warren Wong build me a set of 29s just for that reason. We'll be seeing a lot more dual 29 type frames. As for what's to come, as you saw in the beginning of the video, there was a lot of material there for Taildragger Type 2s, which is what is going to keep me busy for the upcoming weeks. And to avoid doing repetitive videos, I'm going to try and change it up. And we'll talk more about our affiliates, talk about bike parts, your option for bike parts, those types of things. And you find that of your interest, be sure to keep it tuned right here on the Peak Cycles YouTube channel. Meanwhile, that's pretty much gonna wrap it up. Hope you enjoyed today's version of what's happening at Peak Cycles. And until next time, make it a killer day.